Okay, so just a couple of things right at the beginning. This is the longest talk I've written. It's incredibly long. It is 7,235 words. I'm usually around 5,500, okay? So I'm going to be talking really fast. No, I won't be talking really fast. So I'm going to do my best and try not to run out of time to get through this and try to let you get home before midnight. As a result, there's no Bardsley Institute minutes, because I figured if I said, right, that's finished, now it's this, I would just see lots of people vacating very quickly that way. So the Bardsley minutes have been done, but they will have to wait for another time. I also, it's really important to a historian, to a researcher, a couple of things. One, this is my talk. Every one of these 7,000 words has been written by me. I do the research, okay? I never pass anything off as my own. But you also, it's really important to give credit where credit's due. And Dave loaned me these amazing books by Rob McGee. And so, as I said, the majority of the research is mine, but some of the real fantastic detail about historic pubs, beer houses, ale houses and whatnot has come from Rob McGee, okay? And unfortunately, he passed away in 2009, but he was a local, he was an Oldham historian who was a specialist in pubs. I mean, that's my kind of... And when I'm reading them, you know, so many of them, it's like, well, our last dinner, that's how I imagine he talked. 1956, and I had a pint of this. I mean, he did a lot of personal research for a lot of these pubs, which I think is amazing. So, you know, credit where credit's due. I really just wanted to be very clear about that. Okay, so on to an Oldham pub crawl through time. It is a subject I have covered before in my talk last year on the pubs and breweries, which I still can't really say, of Oldham, which hopefully you'll remember. And that talk was more specific to breweries and some of the older pubs and beer houses and ale houses in Oldham. But tonight, we're going on a journey through some very specific pubs in Oldham. Some historic, well, they're all historic, some are a bit more recent. And I'm really hoping that you remember some of the ones that are no longer functioning as pubs, okay, because I would love to build on what Rob wrote, because these were published in the early 90s, and a lot of the pubs that were still in business are no longer in business, but I'm hoping if any of you have memories of these, please do share them with me. So there's actually 285 pubs in those 3 books, and I have researched and categorised every single one, more of which I will come back to later. No, I didn't visit all 285, okay, so maybe just a few. But in its history, Oldham's had way more pubs than that. So in 1869, Oldham had 258 beer houses and 168 public houses. Do you know what the difference is between a beer house and a public house? No?
Beer house only sells beer.
Pretty much, yes. There's actually quite a few different types of premises licensed to sell alcohol. So alcohol became licensed when sold from the 1550s, i.e. a tax was paid on it, which impacted the selling price, made some more expensive than others. The Beer Act of 1830 removed tax on beer. So if you obtained license to run solely a beer house, it was considerably cheaper than having a full license to run a public house, which at this time, the time of these pubs, the 19th century, sold beer, wine and spirits. And this distinction remained in place until 1960, and under current English law, a pub is a public house licensed to sell wines, beers, spirits and pretty much all other alcoholic drinks. An ale house is a public house that can sell beer, cider and wine, cannot sell spirits, so no flipping use to me and my vodka habit. And a free house is the same as a public house, but they're not tied to a specific brewery, it can sell whatever beer it wants to. Now, for the purposes of not tying myself in knots, I pretty much use the word pub when I'm describing anything this evening. Sometimes I put in beer house or whatever, but for the majority it's a pub. I felt that was a specification you didn't really need. And why did Oldham have so many drinking establishments? you know, in 1801, Oldham only had 12,000 people living here. And there are two reasons why the number of pubs, etc., exploded. First one being the rise of the coaching industry. There was an act in 1753 that put a turnpike road in Oldham on the Manchester to Osterland coaching route, and in 1790 Oldham became a stopping point for the Manchester to Wakefield coach. So coaches are now specifically stopping in Oldham, along with many other towns around the country. So of course people said, I think I'm going to open a pub. I think they're going to need somewhere to stay the night and to wet their whistle. And by 1825 there were loads of coaching inns, one of them the Angel, dating back to 1770, probably even earlier. And this link to transportation, to coaching routes, is something I'll come back to later. Now, before I go into a deeper dive about these lots, I thought, shall we start with the pubs of Bardsley?
Yeah, what do you like that?
I thought you would. So I was talking with a wise older gentleman, Roy, who you'll have noticed is not in his usual place to heckle me in tonight's talk. And I'm sure a lot of you are aware that Roy hasn't been very well, and he's still in hospital. I've been catching up with him pretty much most days. He is an amazing spirit and very much hoping that he's going to be home tomorrow. He's very disappointed. Well, so he told me he was disappointed. He couldn't get to the talk tonight. However, he has followed me on YouTube and he keeps making a point of, he's going to watch it. So, you know, like I said to him tonight, I'm sure there'll be a phone call in the next few days correcting any mistakes I make. Well, let's face it, Roy's old enough to have been to most of these pubs, so, you know, he'll know if I get some of the details wrong. So, but through Roy, and I think from other people, I discovered Bardsley at one point had 10 pubs, which I love. I mean, we clearly moved here at the wrong time. There's just one now. But there were 10, so I'm going to start the talk with a run-through of these. Let's see how many you remember. Okay. That is the horseshoe, absolutely. So, I found information which I found really interesting, but I am going to preface this by saying I'm not entirely sure it's accurate, but I've not had time to dig any deeper. Apparently, the horseshoe, before 1863, was on the other side of the road. And it is shown in its current position on the 1906 map of Bardsley. So clearly it was there then. But yeah, I read that it was originally on the opposite side. So yeah, I'll ask Roy that one, you might remember. And by all accounts, a very popular, a very lively pub. But the last review I could find on TripAdvisor was from 2016. I think it closed around that time. Yeah. So a very old, I mean, notwithstanding whether 1863 is accurate or not, it is a very old pub. And a shame that it's closed. We have the Halfway House. Oh, I got that right. Okay, because there's a few I'm like, was this one? Okay, so this opened in 1845. Originally owned by Chester Brewery, and it was owned by Chester Brewery for most of its life. Again, shown on the 1906 map of Bardsley. I love it, like, what's the important stuff? We're going to put in the roads, we're going to put in where the church, we'll put the and the pubs. We're going to make sure we get the pubs in there as well. And I understand there was a fire here in about 2017 and it closed in 2019. Don't remember a fire. Again, so some of the details I've read, I wasn't 100% sure of the accuracy, but that's why I wanted to check with you. But certainly it did close and it became a funeral directors. Yes. Got that bit right. Which, that itself is also closed. And it is one of the contenders for a local story as to where bodies were taken after the pit explosion in 1858. So I've been told the bodies were taken here, quite fitting considering its later use as a funeral parlour. But it's not the only one with that claim to fame. We have the Daisy Field. So that's I took that photo, I think it's quite jolly, I did well with that. So I'm unsure when this was established. It's not on the 1906 map, but there is a reference to a house on Keb Lane dating back to the 16th century, which may have been an inn, some kind of public house. Again, I need to do a bit more digging into that one. But either way, this has been a fixture in Bardsley for many years, and we've got an image here from 1947, which I like. Do you like my arrows there? It's super clear. And it was granted an asset of community value in 2021 after a housing developer tried to acquire the beer garden for development. Yes, yes. So clearly not on your watch. Quite the fuss was kicked up, and you know, they were able to fight it off. And I think it's just as well, it's pretty much the last pub standing, you know, so it's great that we still have the Daisy.
Can I just tell you something else about the Daisy?
You certainly can.
If you go back to your previous slide, if you look at the front door, and there's the white post, either side there's a stone, and the one on the left has carved into it the date it was laid by, it may not have been the mayor, some
I
dignitary,
can see that.
and that'll tell you when it was built.
I mean, I have been in there quite a few times, but I've never looked down.
If you ask Mick, he'll kneel down and look at it for you.
Ah, well, they're just on the outside.
Yeah, that's just there, yeah.
Fab. I will do that. I will go and have a look tomorrow. Thank you so much for that. I love you lots. So yes, Daisy Field. Oh, actually, and this is apropos of pretty much nothing else. What was that? Do you know what that was used for?
Engineering works originally, and then it became Pyrex.
Ah, okay. Engineering works then became Pyrex.
Well, a storage place for Pyrex.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. I thought I'd just quickly ask that because I've seen that. I've got that photo, and I've often wondered. Brilliant. Yeah. Okay, that was the Daisy. So, Black Diamonds. Black Diamonds. So I'm unsure, again, when this was established as a pub, it is thought to be a younger pub than others in Bardsley, and the name beautifully reflecting Bardsley's coal mining community. Obviously there were lots of coal pits nearby. Seems to be a very busy and popular pub, and it closed, I believe, in 2016, and obviously has been converted to a residential property. So this is another pub that makes a claim to have held the bodies in the cellar from those who died in the pit explosion. And, you know, on surface value that makes more sense because it's closer to where the pit was, but it's not on the 1906 map of Bardsley. So that doesn't mean it wasn't there, but I think it means it's unlikely because other pubs are clearly shown. But don't worry, I have another tale involving a dead body and this pub. So, this was shared by Roy. Apparently, this story dates from years ago, back in the day, when a customer said they would bring a dead body into the pub for a bet. We've all made a drunken bet in our life. Some of us have made quite a few. None of mine have ever involved a dead body. I can be quite clear on that. But apparently, the gentleman did indeed bring a dead body to the pub and won the bet. The landlord told him to take the body away, and the gentleman refused, saying the bet was to bring a dead body and not to take the bugger away. Now, I couldn't find any details of that story online. However, Roy said the body came from the Newmarket pub, which had a mortuary attached. So I did some research. There is a pub called the Newmarket in Pendlebury, and there are local stories that say the pub's cellar once served as a mortuary for Altrincham Hospital. So there could be a kernel of truth. Maybe an unfortunate deceased did make the 17-mile round trip between Pendlebury and Barnsley. You know, I love these local stories. And then there was the Bottom Club. So that was fun putting that into Google. Got quite a few interesting search results on that. But I did discover the Bottom Club was a nickname for Bardsley's Conservative Club. And I have found almost no information on this. However, on the 1906 map, there is a club. It literally just says club right there. Doesn't tell me what type it was. It's about halfway between Knott Lanes and Victoria Street. I think kind of where the caravan park is now. Does anybody here remember the Conservative Club?
Yeah.
Yes. Is that where it was?
Ashton Road?
Ashton Road.
That's that industry, isn't it?
Was that the Liberal Club?
So the Liberal Club's further up here. There's the horseshoe.
Oh,
There's the church. So the Daisy Chains nursery is here. There is, and Simon House is up there, but there is another nursery kind of to the back.
I'm wrong.
But do you remember where the Conservative Club was?
I don't remember that one.
No. Oh, not to worry. The Liberal Club,
Yeah.
Simon House. That was the Liberal Club. So again, I don't have huge amounts of information. I don't have a photo of the Liberal Club, but again, on the 1906 map, pretty much where Simon House is, it says club.
Yeah.
So, hence the Liberal Club. And I believe, just here, that's probably where the old pub sign would have hung. And as you'll see further in the talk, I've developed quite an interest in old pub signs, and I will come back to that. So we've also got the driving range and the cricket club. As of now, got nothing about those. I'll do a deeper dive. Then if you've got anything to share about the cricket club or the driving range, please do feel free to share. The rugby club, again, not huge amounts of different details, but I've known quite a few rugby players, well, in my youth, I mean, not like playing for England, and I can imagine the kind of drinking that they got up to. So the rugby club moved to Keb Lane in 1922, moved to its current site in 1978, and we've got this photo from 1947, which I absolutely adore, showing like a match or some training taking place, and I think this is the clubhouse where I've marked, where the drinking would have taken place. Yeah. I bet round there, that's kind of where the new buildings are, probably some echoes of some very drunken nights around that area. And then I couldn't finish without a little bit about Smokies, one of the most notorious of them all. Honestly, I say this all the time when people ask where I live and I say Bardsley, and I don't know that. Do you know Smokies? Oh, yeah, my sister got married there in 1972, and I went to a great New Year's Eve do there in 1984. Everybody knows Smokies, so I'm like, I live near Smokies. So this is an undated photo, but I believe after 1947, and it shows like the first use of the site after, because obviously it was built on top of the old coal mine. And there was a petrol station which developed into the Smoke Pole Grill, which was a cafe named after a piece of equipment that could be seen on the site. Became a restaurant, I believe, known for its weekly dances, and became Smokies in 1989, and obviously it was renamed. It will always be Smokies, won't it? It's always going to be Smokies. So I did a lot of research as well. I know it's not Bardsley, but there are still a lot of pubs on Hollands Road, and there is one definitely featuring in the talk tonight. But it's fascinating, actually, the detail, but I did not have time. By the time I got to those, I was already at 6,700 words. So that is going to have to wait for another time. But I think there's going to be a second part to this talk. Obviously, you'll tell me otherwise. You're like, no, Caleb, I've had enough. But hopefully you won't. Okay, so that's Bardsley. Now on to the main part of tonight's talk. As I said, Dave Mason really kindly loaned me these books. They are fantastic. They're on my Christmas list. I think Marcus has seen the price of them online and gone, I'm not sure quite enough. But they give amazing detail about the ale houses, the beer houses of Oldham, dating back to the 18th century. And so I decided to take a slightly different approach to the one when I gave a talk last year about the pubs and breweries of Oldham. And that was kind of about some specific pubs, but I wanted to go into detail about so many of them. And so what I've done, I've looked at the names of the pubs, I've looked at the locations of them, and I kind of did a real deep dive, and I did what historians like me love to do. I started categorising. So I compiled a table of the streets that are mentioned in the pubs and put each pub onto each street, and I categorised them. So there were 285 drinking establishments mentioned in the books, and I discovered so much information. I divided the names into these categories, so there are 10: royalty and heraldry, occupations and guilds, animals, religious and celestial, transportation, location, national and patriotic, objects linked to pubs. That was a kind of I can't think of anywhere else that these are going to go. Descriptive and humorous. And there are some really interesting names. So of those different categories, what do you think might have had the most entries? You've got occupations, you've got guilds, you've got religious, you've got animals, you've got royalty, locations, transport, royalty, animals. Yeah? It was indeed animals. I made a pie chart. Which I didn't do in the right order, but we've got animals, so 58 of the 285 were named after animals. Location, it was 53. Occupation and guilds, 45. Royalty and heraldry was 38. Objects linked to pubs, only 3. And I was like, I tried so hard to shoehorn them into another category, but I just couldn't. So that's what we ended up with. So yes, animals was the most popular. And that one really did tickle me. I mean, I'm known as a passionate animal lover, and it made me happy to see so many pub names reflecting this. And I can break the category of animals down even further for you. What do you think is the most popular animal for an Oldham pub to be named after? Dog?
Lion.
Bull? Lion?
Parrot.
Parrot? That is so specific. I love it. I love it. Horses. So 15 of them were named after horses. They didn't let me down too badly. 10. So remember, these are historic. If one opened, say, 5 years ago, the Plum and Parrot, that's not included. I think that's a great name for a pub, actually, the Plum and Parrot. So if there's a more modern one, it's not included. This is about the historic ones. But yes, but the biggest number was horses, and I'll be going through some examples. We've got dogs. I did expect the occasional red lion, along with many dog and partridges, but some of my favourites were the Gaping Goose on Rochdale Road, the Conquered Bear on Huddersfield Road, and on Miles Road there was a pub called the Hen and Chickens, which I just love, the Hen and Chickens. So we're going to have a closer look at these categories. So as I said, this is where, because I'm going to go through all 10, if we do start running out of time, it will have to go into a part 2, but I'll do my best, okay? I'm also going to make reference to an 1894 report into Oldham's public houses, which provides some amazing detail about individual premises, and I was particularly interested in references to bathrooms, or lack of, more commonly. Oh, I've got some interesting stories about that. It was commissioned by Oldham's chief constable following an investigation into the ownership and condition of pubs and beer houses. And the report was an ongoing study. There had been reports earlier in the 19th century, but it's just the 1894 report that I'm going to refer to this evening. So, animals, my first category. One important thing to bear in mind with the naming of pubs in the 18th and 19th century in Britain, a lot of the population was illiterate. So a simple, easily recognisable visual sign was important for identification. If you had a painted or a sculpted image, for example, the Red Lion at Bottom Moor, the Horse and Jockey on Wilkinson Street, the Hart and Hounds on Yorkshire Street, the Bee's Wing, another very cute one, on Manchester Street, that is far more effective at that time than an actual written name. And animals proved a rich source of imagery. You know, many animals, not necessarily in Oldham, but derived from coats of arms or livery badges of local landowning families. You know, your publicans might use their animal as a way of saying, you know, we have their patronage, or this pub is built on their land, and might help to attract their tenants. So at this time, there was a rise in pubs aligning themselves with popular local pastimes and blood sports. And names could indicate that the pub was a meeting place for hunters located near hunting grounds, or even hosted events like duck baiting or cockfighting. The Hare and Hounds on Yorkshire Street is known to have existed in a different location as early as 1756, and it moved to its current location on Yorkshire Street after the road was completed in 1804. Now, when the pub moved in 1804, the licensee was George Wright, who was also Oldham's head huntsman. And the Hare and Hounds was the headquarters of Oldham's Hunt. And in fact, you've got Hunter's Lane, which runs down from Yorkshire Street, a reminder of that piece of local history. In 1861, another landlord, Joseph Kershaw, found himself in trouble. A group of men were discovered drinking in the pub at 8:30 a.m. on a Sunday morning. He was brought before the licensing magistrates and fined 10 shillings. But you know, didn't really have the effect they were aiming for, because he did exactly the thing the following year. Was fined again. And as you shall see, he was not the only landlord behaving badly in Oldham at this time. So the 1894 report says it was in fair condition, 7 drinking rooms, 5 bedrooms, no bathroom,
Oh, God.
stabling for 2 horses. The Hare and Hounds closed during COVID and was boarded up, and planning permission was granted for it to be converted into residential apartments. It's a shame, what a wonderful piece of history. And you know, I read so many wonderful things. Oldhamers love sharing memories online. And there were so many stories about, I want to go in with my mum, you know, to the market or shopping on a Saturday. One of the favourite things for kids was running up and down those steps. So many stories about that, which is lovely. So moving on to royalty and heraldry. There are several reasons, again, why a pub may be named after the royal family or other well-known figures. So the tradition of using royal imagery for a pub name, and signs, dates back to an act from 1393 under Richard II, which made it compulsory for pubs to have an identifying sign. And this was for that. This was for taxation purposes, or for, well, certainly for money. So ale testers would go to pubs to test the quality, and if your quality wasn't up to standard, you would be fined. But remember, people were very literate, so they wouldn't necessarily know which was a pub. And if there wasn't a sign, they certainly wouldn't know. So if you're an ale housekeeper and you were watering down your ale, you could hope to get away with it. But by making it the law that you had to have a sign outside to say this is a drinking establishment, your testers could go in, test it, and fine you if you weren't doing it properly. So many adopted the King's personal badge, the White Hart, and that established a long-standing tradition of using royal symbols. The Red Lion was a royal badge associated with James I, and there was a Red Lion at Bottom Moor, and there was a Red Lion at Marketplace. White Horse became popular as a name in the 19th century because of its association with Hanoverian kings. Now, I didn't find any white horses in Oldham, although we did have a White Swan on Huddersfield Road, another White Swan on Manchester Road.
Lucky duck.
What was that?
The White Swan, it used to be called Lucky Duck.
The Mucky Duck?
Yeah.
Was that the one on Huddersfield Road?
Yeah.
Love it.
Lucky duck.
Keep shouting these out, honestly. There was a White Lion at Marketplace, a White Bear on George Street, White Hart Inn on Hollins Road, and the old White Hart on Chadderton Way. And there was also a practical reason of having a somewhat generic royal name for your pub, as it meant the name would stay relevant regardless of who's sitting on the throne. So it would save you the time and expense of changing the pub sign when a new king or queen came along. So there was a King's Arms on Ashton Road. So, you know, I'm always pointing in the wrong direction. Am I pointing up towards Oldham?
No, that way.
That way, right. Up Ashton Road. Great historian, Robert's at geography. Where Windsor's is, on the other side, just a little bit more towards us, there was a King's Arms. You knew it well. Yeah, that was the King's Arms.
Yeah.
And that was originally called the Pitt and Nelson, a nod to another category that I'll be coming to, national and patriotic. William Pitt the Younger was Prime Minister in 1805 when Nelson had his victory at the Battle of Trafalgar, also the naval battle in which he was killed. But the name had changed to the King's Arms by 1834. It was renamed the Queen Anne in 1842. Must have been for the Queen Anne who reigned 1702 to 1714, as there were no Queen Annes knocking about at that time. But it was back to being the King's Arms again 2 years later. 1894 report described it in fair condition, 6 drinking rooms, 4 bedrooms, no bathroom, stabling for 2 horses, and it closed in 1964. Location. Naming your pub after where it physically was a very popular thing to do in the 19th century. Remember, if lots of the local population can't read and you want them to come to your pub and not Bob's down the road, make it easy for them to find you. A pub sign depicting a local landmark led to names such as Brookside on Lees Road, which was situated next to Lees Brook. It was also a navigation aid, names like the Coach and Horses on Huddersfield Road, the navigation on Manchester Road, the railway and commercial on railway roads indicated their function and location relative to transport routes. The Coach and Horses on Church Lane dated to at least 1804, when it was a pub called the Mason's Arms, and it had changed to Coach and Horses by 1813. That closed in 1920, and the 17th century building was demolished in 1931, something Oldham's great at doing, unfortunately. It was not without scandal. In 1859, the landlord, Peter MacDonald, was fined 5 shillings for serving ale at 12:25 a.m. on a Sunday morning. Cheeky lock-in. And we have our very own example. The Hathershaw, just up the road. Owned by Oldham Brewery in 1900. I read that it used to have some amazing music nights. This seems to have been a very popular place to go, and sadly this too closed in 2019. And I couldn't give this talk without visiting one famous, infamous, how's that thought? The Honeywell. You know, named for the Honeywell mill that it was built next, that had been built a few years previously. So the pub popped up in 1887 and was the N3 of a row of 21 houses. Obviously they're not all there now. And in 1955, the year the old mill building burned down, Robinsons, who'd taken over the pub, extended into a 4th property to provide space, very specifically, for a larger public bar and a gents' toilet. So I don't know what the ladies were expected to do. But then I was like, well, it's 1955. They probably weren't allowed in. Get out.
I can remember going into Manchester in 1982 and you weren't allowed in tap rooms. Women were not allowed in tap rooms.
Really?
Which made me a bit
We just
indignant.
on there.
I don't know what year it changed.
Yeah.
I found that weird that you couldn't.
But it was never, well, as far as I'm aware, it was never like legally women couldn't go in, but women know your place, you know.
Yeah.
It was a sort of woman that would go into a pub, you know, a sort of woman. I'm not saying that's right, but that was generally the view. Clearly, like in 1982, that's why they didn't let her in. Not on my pub, love. And so the Honeywell, I mean, do you know, I've never set foot in it, and it just looked
Grubby.
Yeah.
grubby. We'll go with grubby.
Yeah.
But do you know, it was such a landmark. I was genuinely gutted when it closed. I thought that is going to survive the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
You know, I believe so. Yeah, but it's a wonderful piece of local history. It really is. Even though it looked quite grubby. I once said to Marcus, should we go?
No.
And he was like, it's not often to put my foot down, Mark. That's not happening, let's go to the Daisy.
25 years ago, my friend's parents ran that pub. And
Really?
it was, at that time, a lovely little pub.
Yeah.
But they actually won the lottery and came out of the
Oh,
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
about it. And you said as well,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
about previous having won the lottery.
Yeah.
I think Park Cake are buying it, aren't they?
Yeah,
Yeah,
smashed
it's
it
just
down.
been flattened.
They're smashing it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in the paper this
Yeah.
week, yeah.
It is a shame. But I mean, yeah, it looked grubby. So, yeah. Okay, the next category, local history and ownership. So I think this follows on quite nicely from being named for location. So pubs served as community hubs where allegedly important local events were discussed. Yeah, of course they were. Naming a pub after a significant local event or an anecdote or something nationally helped preserve that memory within the community. There are often nods to local myths and legends linking a pub to the local area's cultural history as well. Although sometimes, you know, when I'm looking at these pub names now, I am scratching my head and thinking, what does that refer to? I don't understand the context behind the naming of that pub. Pubs often named after prominent local figures, successful businessmen, politicians, an infamous local character, making the pub a focal point for local pride or gossip. One Oldham pub with a brilliant name, the Fiddling David, and it was on the corner of Lion Dam Street, which no longer exists. That's tickled you. Did you have some good nights there in 1982?
I'm not telling you.
After redevelopment, the area is now Fletcher Drive, which is just north of Manchester Road. So I've discovered absolutely no reason behind the name Fiddling David, and maybe there isn't one, but I do like to think of a local character, maybe his skill on the fiddle, maybe you can tell me later, giving his name to his local beer house. It was first licensed in 1840, obtained a music license in 1868. However, in 1914, the licensing magistrate decided they didn't want a pub in the area anymore. So despite protests, the Fiddling David closed down in 1915. But there were reports in the year afterwards that the building was being used as a doss house, so clearly closing the pub didn't do much to improve the reputation of the area. And there was the Cotton Bud Inn, which was on West Street. Now, Cotton Bud doesn't sound so odd to us, but the Cotton Bud pub dates to 1870, and the Cotton Bud wasn't invented until 1923. So, some reference to the cotton industry. Actually, even more curious, in 1850, the Cotton Bud Inn was called Remember the Old Dog Crib, which clearly makes no sense at all in 2025. But at the time, there was a real reason. Oh, remember the old dog crib. Oh, that's so Bob, that is. Well, of course he's going to name his pub that. But we don't know why, and I find it absolutely fascinating. And again, a record of naughtiness at the Fiddling David. In 1852 and again in 1861, the landlord, Abraham Fletcher, was fined for serving at outside hours, including at 9:20 a.m. on a Sunday morning. It's all these lock-ins.
Yeah.
It's all these cheeky lock-ins. And the 1894 report states it was in a bad state of repair, but it did continue serving alcohol until it closed in 1909. So national and patriotic, one of my favourites. So many pubs in 18th and 19th century Britain were named for national and patriotic purposes, commemorating military victories, honouring national heroes and displaying political allegiance. The 18th and 19th century saw Britain involved in numerous global conflicts, and victories were a source of great national pride. Pubs were often named to celebrate these successes, and common examples included the Waterloo after the 1815 battle, where the Duke of Wellington defeated Napoleon. What was Blinds, just down the road, was originally a pub called the Waterloo Tavern. Oh, Wendy. Oh, yeah. Many a great night. And a little Tesco, almost opposite it.
Yeah, Wellington.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, it was originally called the Waterloo, but they changed it a few years later to the Wellington Inn. Many a good night in there? It's just about within walking staggering distance home, isn't it?
Yeah.
You could nip to both of these and you're what, 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Which you wouldn't notice after you've had enough beers in there. And those of you who attended my talk on the Peterloo Massacre probably remember Henry Hunt, the radical reformer, the main attraction of the day. So there was a pub in Oldham named after him. It was located on Brunswick Street, opened in 1850. Henry Hunt had died 15 years previously. In 1860, the pub was granted a billiards licence, followed by a music licence in 1868. When J.W. Lee's brewery bought the pub in 1805, it was found to be in poor condition. The urinal was outside, right next to the front door. So by 1894, the brewery had updated the pub and they had put the urinal next to the back door. And the pub closed in 1909 and is now residential housing. Henry Hunt would have been so proud. So proud. Get in, lads. And there were several pubs in Oldham called Britannia. So there was a Britannia on Busk Street, which opened in 1858, but I'm not sure when that one closed.
Yeah, Brick Busk.
Yeah?
Played darts there.
I think you can give me a lot. I'm going to rely on you. A lot of detail from you is going to go in this. There's the Britannia Hotel on Henshaw Road, opened in 1868 and closed in 1972. Britannia on Hollins Road. Now, this one, really interesting. And I've driven past this a million times and not really given it much thought. So, the Britannia, as is, first had a licence under this name from 1808. So, over 200 years old. But Hollins Road is believed to be an ancient route between Manchester and Oldham. And this building may date to the 18th century, when Hollins Road was actually a turnpike road. It could even be that there's been an inn at this location for hundreds of years, bearing in mind it was a very old route that people were using between Manchester and Oldham. 1894 report said it had 4 drinking rooms, 3 bedrooms, no bathroom, stabling for 1 horse, but in 1924 the stable block was converted to a wash house. So at least we know there's certainly a loo there at some point. Again, I've never been in. I'm going to work on the assumption there are facilities inside.
They won't serve me in there.
Well,
When I was 18, what he said, I went in with a mate. He said, you can serve him, but don't serve him, he's too young. I was 18. I always look young for my age.
yes. What, you've never been back?
There's loads of pubs around there.
Oh yeah, there's like Hollins Road is absolutely, but have you ever been back?
We used to go in the Lark.
Oh, that's on the other side, yeah.
Oh, so we're not featuring in tonight, but watch this space. Watch this space. And one of the very few examples in tonight's talk of a pub that's still in business, from the ones I've mentioned. Occupations and guilds. So many pubs, 18th, 19th century, named after occupations and guilds, again, several practical reasons. So they could be unofficial meeting points for local tradesmen. So if you had a pub called, say, the Bricklayers Arms, then it's likely that's where the local bricklayers would gather. And so if employers were looking for some skilled workers, they could rock up to the pub on a Friday night, a Sunday morning, and go and find who they were looking for. So I looked really specifically for pub names that reflected Oldham's cotton industry. And there's hardly any. I found it really surprising. There was a Carter's Arms on Featherstall Road at one point, mentioned in 1869 because it obtained a music licence, but Platt's Works next door extended in 1886 and the pub disappeared, so it looks like it was, absorbed into the building project. The Spinner's Arms on Shore Road dates to at least 1753, when it was called the Pack Horse. It was then renamed the Duke of York in 1795, and by 1811 it had become the Spinner's Arms again. And we know it was the Spinner's Arms in 1811 because the landlord was fined 40 shillings plus 7 shillings cost, not for drinking out of hours this time, but for playing cards in the pub. So he must have been playing for money, because it wasn't illegal to play cards, but it was illegal to play games of chance for cash. This actually wasn't repealed until the 21st century, but yes, it was taken very seriously. And in 1860, there was a tea party thrown at the Spinner's Arms for 50 Oldham grandmothers and grandfathers. 5 of the guests were aged over 80, 2 of them were 99 years old. Which is, that's pretty good going nowadays, back in 1860. So I have a further example of being named after an occupation or guild, not cotton related. So just up the road, do you remember the Collier's Arms Cross? Yeah.
He's played darts there.
Let me know if I get to a pub that you didn't play darts in. Yeah? So on the corner of Ashton Road and Honeywell Lane. So there is a reference to an alehouse at this location dating to 1755. But the first reference to the cross receiving a licence dates to 1819. And again, a perfect place for a pub to stand. Again, referencing another talk of mine last year, I think it was, Old Things of Oldham. And I mentioned that road is an ancient Roman road linking Manchester to Castleshaw Fort. So clearly all those travellers would be in need of a drink. The 1894 survey tells us the pub had 5 drinking rooms, 4 bedrooms, no bathroom, standard, stabling for 2 horses, and described as being in good condition. So this photo is undated, but it shows the pub in all its glory. Yes? It's the buildings, I mean, that bit no longer exists, and that's just wall now, having been replaced by this. Yeah, so the appliance centre. So it closed in 2014, and as I said, it's now this place, the lovely, lovely appliance centre.
We used to have really good acts on there, like, you know, like singers and
Yeah.
drag queens and things like that.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, it was
Now
good.
it's selling washers.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that struck me when because again I drive past this a million times, but I was too lazy to get out of my car and take a photo, so I just pinched it from online. Okay, we'll edit that from the video. But look here, the old pub sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, brilliant! I will get out of my car and I will go and take a photo. And I drove up, no longer there. There is no pub sign there. So when I was next driving past, I pulled over and parked up and I went in and asked them. And the lovely gentleman explained that about 6 months, I think he said 6 months ago, it blew down in a storm. And my concern was for the sign. Was the sign damaged? But the shop owner was like, no, nobody was hurt. That was our main concern, which shows you the difference between a historian and a shop owner. Okay, I was like, don't care about people on the street. How is the sign doing? So I asked him, I said, well, what did you do with it? Do you still have it? And he said, yes, follow me. So we went out the back, and there, with a load of junk, ready to be taken to the tip, was the sign.
And now you've got it.
Have you kept it?
So I said, can I have it, please? And they loaded it into my car,
Oh, wow. Oh.
and that's it, in my garden. It's now inside.
Our house.
It is so heavy. Oh my gosh, that is heavy. And it's huge. It's absolutely, well, our fence at the front, you can just see it's higher than the fence. Our fence is 4 foot.
Yeah.
It is massive and it is filthy, but it's a restoration project for next year. And the thing that I really like, so here you can see it's black, it's got collier's arms, but you can see there's just a little something under there. A lot of this has come off. So basically, I think this sign is actually quite old. This, someone's just painted over it. When I talk about the size and the weight of it, it must have cost a lot of money. And so to update it, they've just painted over it, put new signage on it. Of course they have. But we have, not original to the early 19th century, but I think this is at least 100 years old. And so I am going to have it properly restored next year. We need to clean it first.
Unless someone wants to take it.
No, Marcus. But you know, all he keeps saying to me is, that's great, listen, we'll get it restored, we'll get it cleaned and all this. When is it going to go? And that's the main question Marcus keeps
The
asking.
front wall outside the house.
Where's it going to go? I suggested hanging it on the wall of our house.
Loads of people turning up in the middle of the night. No, we're not.
Exactly. When Marcus is next away.
Take it to the repair shop, Kelly.
Take it.
Repair shop.
Yeah, do you know, I
The
thought about
television,
that. I did think about that.
If it's that heavy, well, they might not want to do it.
No, well, listen, I will get it restored. But isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
You know, and all because I was lazy. This is paying off laziness. Because I couldn't be bothered to get out the car to take a photo myself. I found an old photo and I saw that, and now it's mine. Well, no, it's ours. It's part of our history. Yeah. And I have to say, I'm really glad that you guys are so excited, because I've told quite a few people and they're all like, that's the saddest thing I've ever heard. It is. Do you know, tutoring one of my history students who loves history. She's my history student who adores history. And I told her, and waited for the, oh my God, Ken, that's amazing. And she was like, that's a bit tragic, isn't it?
Well, you've got the sign when you open the pub.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, exactly. Marcus keeps saying, where's it going to go? When I get the pub open. There we
You
go.
can go here. You can bring it in here and share it with everyone.
Shush. Thank you. I've completely lost track of where I was up to now. So, religious and celestial. We're on to the next category. An interesting category of pub names. When it comes to religion, various reasons for pub names. So many names have their origins in the Middle Ages when inns were often run by monasteries, providing accommodation for pilgrims. Inns adopted religious symbols and names, and many survived, the religious upheavals over the intervening years. And religious symbols, angels, crosses, saintly emblems, instantly recognisable, making them very effective signage. Or maybe some people wandered in thinking they were going to do a confession, but then they were like, oh, well, we'll have some beer instead. You never know. And names could convey virtuous or positive associations. So if you stepped into the good intent on Lees Road on a Friday afternoon, maybe you believed that attributes reflecting in the pub name would somehow find their way into you. Maybe if you drank enough, they would. There was a very practical reason that many pubs were located near a church and so often adopted the names to reflect that proximity. We have the lovely name Ring o' Bells that was on Church Street. This pub closed down, the building was demolished in 1836. It is known there was a pub on the site from around 1750. Originally known as the Boar's Head, the name changed to the Six Ringers and then to the Ring o' Bells. I love that. And for celestial reasons, a variety of reasons. So objects like the sun, moon, stars, easy to paint on a pub sign, universally recognisable. So not hugely popular as names in Oldham. There was one star pub on King Street and two Suns, one on Henshaw Street and one on Manchester Street. Not the biggest of categories. Transportation. So many pubs were named after transportation due to significant changes in travel during the Industrial Revolution and also for practical reasons. The 18th century saw a rise in stagecoach travel, vastly improved roads, as I've referenced, like Holland Road becoming a turnpike road, and the new coaching routes that were popping up. Inns popped up, as I said, along these busy routes, essential stops. Passengers could get food and rest, might not use the bathroom because there probably wasn't one, but the horses could be changed, they could be stabled, they could be looked after. And names such as Wagon and Horses clearly advertised their function, hopefully attracting passing trade. So Oldham had 4 pubs with this name. There was the Wagon and Horses on Huddersfield Road. Did we play darts there?
No, but I know where it is.
So the Wagon and Horse on Huddersfield Road, a major route, and that was licensed at least as early as 1824, possibly earlier. In 1836, the landlord of that Wagon and Horses, John Slater, fined 10 shillings for out-of-hours drinking on a Sunday morning. The 1894 port said it was good condition, no bathroom, closed in 1906 and is now this. Yeah. So, Manchester Road, this one tickles me. Another major thoroughfare, had 2 pubs called Wagon and Horses. Yes? So there was a beer house at the location of 53 Manchester Road since at least 1788, before Manchester Road was completed in the 1790s. I don't know what it was called before then, but at that point it changed to the Wagon and Horses. In 1856, the landlord changed the name to the original Wagon and Horses to distinguish it from the newcomer at 483, also called the Wagon and Horses. But that didn't stick, it was usually referred to as Top Wagon.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yes? So, I found a great story relating to Top Wagon from the later 19th century. The Failsworth Botanical Society used Top Wagon as their meeting place. Very nice. However, the bar proved too much of a temptation. Those attending meetings were regularly becoming drunk and playing dominoes. Have you ever heard such a thing? They were not attending to business. So the society swiftly moved the meetings to a temperance establishment in Rhodesbank. And one other thing struck me about the pub. The 1894 report confirms there was a bathroom and a separate upstairs loo. High living indeed. Top Wagon was where it's at. Now I believe this is an old photo of Top Wagon. Wendy, does that look about right?
Yes.
Fabulous. No longer there, unfortunately. So the other wagon on horses on Manchester Road opened in 1784, became the Navigation Inn in the 1790s, but in 1821 changed its name to Wagon and Horses, despite the one up the road. So just as that one became Top Wagon, this one became Bottom Wagon. Yes?
Yeah. Oh yeah. They did have a navigation, but it were higher up,
Right, yeah.
didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the fourth Wagon and Horses in Oldham was on Ripondon Road. So a 1795 Act of Parliament approved construction of the Oldham to Ripondon Turnpike Road, and an enterprising chap called Mark Buckley immediately obtained a licence and turned an odd farmhouse into an alehouse in anticipation of the forthcoming traffic. In 1889 it was run by John Lees, and one evening about 10 p.m. a policeman entered and found to his surprise all the lights mysteriously went out. He fumbled around, managed to turn the lights on, and found 30 men playing cards for money. So the licensee was fined £5, and the following year, when he applied to have his licence renewed, he was turned down, and a new, presumably non-card playing landlord was installed in his place instead. So the pub, unlike so many others, closed and has been replaced by residential properties, but I believe that's an undated photo from the 60s or 70s. This is the Wagon and Horses on Ripondon Road.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I'm conscious of time. Oh, do you know what? I reckon I could do it if you're happy for another, say, 10 minutes?
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
for it.
fantastic. Thank you. Objects linked to the pub. Tiny categories, only got 3 in it. And I did try to wedge them elsewhere, but they didn't really fit. So one of the pub names, actually, the Beer Emporium, that didn't appear until 1990. Although the building's use as a drinking establishment dates back to 1862. There was the Grapes at 62 Yorkshire Street, opened in 1803. Certainly it opened by 1828, but closed in 2014.
Yeah.
And the Punch Bowl?
Right.
The Punch Bowl, 11 High Street. So that first, oh, well no, actually there's a good reason you don't know it. So it appeared in records as a drinking establishment in 1743 and closed in 1869.
Oh.
So I do need Roy to tell me what that one was like, you know, so yeah. What was that one? Oh yeah, it closed in 1869. So descriptive and humorous, this is the last category I created and was one of the most fun. And I think ultimately pubs had descriptive and or humorous names as a form of advertising. You know, as the towns grew and the number of pubs increased, a quirky or unique name would help an establishment to be discussed, to be remembered, recommended hopefully, especially when competition was high, looking at the number of drinking places Oldham had. So humour, a very simple and effective way to achieve this. So many names could have stemmed from funny, peculiar, grim, local stories. The Gaping Goose on Rochdale Road. I mean, was that named after a local goose that had a particular way of looking at you? I mean, it could be. That Gaping Goose. Oh, Bob. There's Hark to Famous in Grinnikers. I'm always very proud when I say that correctly. Hark to Nudger on Featherstore Road. They were both named after hunting dogs. And I'm going to assume that the topper in the pub name Hark to Topper
Yeah, Central Oldham.
is the same.
Yeah.
And, you know, I love it. Hark to means listen to. So listen to famous, listen to Nudger that are historically recorded as being hunting dogs. We assume Topper is. Why? You know, why are we listening to these dogs? Are we listening to them because they're going to follow the trails and take us to the best hunting places? I just think they're amazing. And I'll finish with two more in this category. So the Dusty Miller on Railway Roads. This opened around 1854 and was one of the first 5 pubs owned by Oldham Brewery. And the 1894 report notes it as being very clean. High praise indeed. And it closed in July 1968. And the last pub is one that is considered to be the oldest, if not the oldest pub in Oldham. Have you got any guesses as to names? The Cheshire Cheese. I mean, it has closed a long time ago. It's probably not one you were regulars of. But this was first recorded in 1714 at Smithy Fold, when the ale housekeeper was a gentleman called John Houghton. And John deserves to be remembered not only as the first landlord potentially the oldest boozer in town, he was also a butcher, and he had a recorded 24 children. Yes. Yes, I don't know how many wives. They all kept dying of exhaustion, but he had 24 children. So the pub was listed between 1784 and 1798 as the Crown and Cushion, but in 1798 reverted back to Cheshire Cheese, and it moved from Smithy Fold to Marketplace in 1824, and the original building was demolished. In 1826, the landlady had £140 stolen from the premises. That's worth about £12,000 now. So clearly the cheese was doing good business. And the culprits were found to be 2 soldiers who were staying there, and they were caught and sent for trial. So the pub was found in 1894 to be in a poor state of repair. Initially the licence renewal was refused, but it did stagger on for a bit longer before the licence was refused for good, and the pub closed in 1926. And that's it. I'm actually quite chuffed with the time on that. Now, just a quick poll. I have adored this, and I've got so much more. Would you like me to do a part 2?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Should we just call it Pubs Wendy has played darts at? Yeah, we can just call it that. So if I do a part 2 for next month's talk, because I was going to recycle my Christmas one, but to heck with Christmas, you'll be bored of it by then. It's the first Thursday in December. Yes, Pubs part 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it wasn't for her, I'd have some food, you know. But Max is like, no, we haven't got a license, so you know. Fair enough, don't want to break the law. Cut that bit from the video too. But no, that would be amazing. And if I have time, I will tag on some minutes from Barnsley's Institute, because I love doing that. But if not, we'll do that next year. But thank you. I hope you've enjoyed it. I enjoyed it.